Leveraging on monitoring. Leveraging on monitoring. Any banker on this platform this evening, this is one of the major reasons why export transactions fail in Nigeria. Inability to monitor. You really cannot monitor what you don't understand. You really cannot monitor what you don't understand. And that's the challenge of export transaction in Nigeria. If there are issues in export transaction in Nigeria, 7 out of 10 times is most likely going to be due to challenge of monitoring. Most likely going to be due to challenge of monitoring. And the reason is very simple. Anytime you're financing a transaction and there is darkness anywhere, by darkness, I mean inadequate understanding of what is being done, that increase drastically the likelihood, of loss. And that also applies to an exporter, but for financier in particular. Many export finance transactions go bad because of inadequate monitoring. In order to effectively monitor an export transaction, is very important to first identify the critical control point in a typical export transaction. The critical control point. The critical control point are the point where failure of export financing could happen. And this includes the point of production, the point of procurement, the point of warehousing, the point of payment, the point of post-export documentation, the point of inspection, the point of haulage, and the point of export clearance. All these points are likely points of challenges with export transactions. To identify this control point, a financier must understand the transaction dynamics of export business. To understand the transaction dynamics of export business, there is need for an intensive training in the fundamentals of export business. Intensive training in the fundamentals of export business. An intensive training in the fundamentals of export business. So that means as a banker, I must think as an exporter. I must think as if I'm putting my money down and I'm mitigating my risk for myself. I must think that way, not as just a financier, as an exporter. That means I want to know everything knowable about that transaction. The item or parameter to be monitored in a typical export transaction include the product, it has to be monitored. Payment, both local and abroad, has to be monitored. Paperwork that give title to the goods have to be monitored. And the pricing that determine profitability also have to be monitored. There are several principles on which effective and efficient monitoring of export finance transaction is based. This principle should guide the process of export finance monitoring from beginning to the end. A neglect of this principle may jeopardize the success of export transaction. Some of these principles include information, independence, interrogation, integration, indicator, inspection, and incoterm. Before we close today, let's look at this monitoring. Like I said, it's one of the most pivotal area for banks. Most pivotal area for banks. Information about export finance transaction is a cardinal principle that must not be neglected. The initial and static information about the export transaction can be obtained from the contract and letter of credit, if applicable, while the latter and dynamic information can be obtained using the principle of export finance monitoring. And up-to-date information on the status of the export transaction per time, from beginning to the end, is critical in the monitoring process. 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 So I need information. Like I said, number one is the information that is static. That's the one on the contract. That does not change. And the LC. But the dynamic information is what caused problem. Now, for me to get this information, I must obey the principle of independence. Another important principle in export finance monitoring is the principle of independence. It's very unwise for a banker to depend solely on the information provided by the exporter in the monitoring process. How will I depend on information provided by the exporter alone in the monitoring process? There is need for independent verification of all the status reports, both documentary and non-documentary, provided by the exporter. Both documentary and non-documentary, provided by the exporter. But how then do I get this information? Then I obey the principle of interrogation. This is the call of export finance monitoring. There is a great need to ask the right question, both from the exporter, his staff, and the supplier, if possible. Now, you know, when you want to ask questions, you must ask questions that enable the person you are asking question to explain. You know, questioning is a skill. Questioning is a skill. Questioning is a skill. The art of questioning is a skill that, if not learned, I will ask question, but sincerely, I've really not asked anything. I will ask question, but in reality, I really have not asked any question. Because I really don't understand the act of questioning. For the advancement of the project, for the success of the project, questioning becomes important. One of the most important things we must learn as human beings and as a financier or as a business person is the act of questioning. But you know what? Asking the right question depends on a thorough and clear understanding of the process. So that means if I don't understand the process, I can't ask questions. If I want to ask question, it has to be an open-ended question, not a closed-ended question. An open-ended question is a question that enables the person I'm asking question to explain. And for my question to be open-ended, the first word of the sentence I'm using to ask that question must be a pronoun, an interrogative pronoun, not a verb. If I ask the question, do you? I'm going to get yes or no answer. I should be using what, why, which, where, how. A kind of questioning that enables the other party to explain. But like I said, you can't give what you don't have. It's only he that is well that can donate blood. If you don't understand the expert, you won't be able to ask the right question. And sincerely, this is one of the reasons why we have challenge with financing export transaction in Nigeria. And that's why banks drag their feet in financing export transaction in Nigeria. And that's why we're doing this seminar, to be able to educate financiers on the need to be able to ask the right question. On the need to be able to ask the right question. If I have learned about anything I want to do and I'm not able to ask the question correctly, then I've not really learned it. You know, being able to ask questions is a skill that we need to learn, but we must also be able to think. But when you think, you actually query your database, because to ask that question, you must think. When you think, you query your database. If the database is shallow, the quality of thought will be poor, and the question will not make sense. That is why learning and understanding the business become extremely important. Integration. Now, another cause of bad debt in export financing, and indeed other type of financing, is the isolated and fragmented way in which information gathered are treated. In which information gathered are treated. This principle involves the integration of all the information obtained in the process of export finance monitoring in order to get true picture of the status of the transaction and thereby make an informed decision, and then being able to set the appropriate mitigant. For example, matching the disbursed fund with the work done. Matching the disbursed fund with the work done. So the bank is releasing money for the export project, but is it ascertaining that the money being disbursed is in line with the goods already delivered? And we are not just looking at the quantity, we are also looking at the quality, especially if it is a commodity, hard commodity or soft commodity. Especially if it's a commodity, hard commodity or soft commodity. Especially if it's a commodity, hard commodity or soft commodity. Hard commodity are minerals, soft commodity are agri products. Hard commodity are minerals, soft commodity are agri products. The source of information to be integrated include bank staff. The bank is able to obtain information. That's the bank staff on the field, in the branches. The inspection agent, the collateral manager, the forwarder, the transporter, and the exporter itself. But you know what happened? We tend to talk, for those that are in risk in the head office, or those product owners in the head office who are coordinating the financing of a transaction, they tend to talk to the exporter and the bank staff in the branches. The bank staff have not been able to get information from the agent, inspection agent who inspects the quality of the goods, or the collateral manager who is supposed to be in charge of the goods, or the forwarder who is supposed to move the goods to the port, or the transporter who owns the truck. Indicator. Whenever we have obtained the information and integrate the information, the integration of the information is to ensure that what someone on the field knows is the same thing that people that are taking decisions in the head office know about the same transaction. That's the idea around integration. 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 Now, when the information has been integrated and is on the system, then indicators. The essence of the information is not just for the sake of getting information, it's to be able to take decision based on the dynamic state of the transaction. Remember, it's changing, constantly changing, based on the dynamic state on the transaction. there is a great risk, talking about indicator, a great need to put indicator in place, to put risk indicator in place rather. This should be based on parameters and threshold to be determined by the bank based on risk appetite. The indicator is to be flagged as at every critical control point in the export transaction. The indicator can be red, can be yellow, can be green, with each showing bad, semi-bad, or good respectively. For example, the bank can decide that a week delay in a milestone step in the export transaction should be flagged as red. Should be flagged as red or yellow. And this will depend on the risk appetite of the bank, and this will determine the next line of action. If it's red, what are we supposed to do? If it's yellow, what are we supposed to do? 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 Inspection. The principle of inspection is extremely critical for the bank before procurement of commodities or after production of finished goods. This enables the financier to monitor the goods, the quality of goods being procured or produced in the warehouse. This in turn gives insight into the amount expected to be paid by the buyer abroad. For example, a lower grade of solid minerals will mean a reduction in the expected export proceed, whereas a lower grade of processed food will mean a total rejection of the item being exported. So, lower grade in cashew nut does not mean a rejection. It means a lower pricing. 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 And this pre-shipment inspection is another very, very important and vital area that must be looked into. Lastly, before we close today, Incoterms. These are international commercial terms that define the extent of cost and risk and responsibility both importers and exporters in a trade transaction. The principle of Incoterms therefore helps the financier to know the extent of monitoring that needs to be done on the export transaction. For example, if Incoterms is FOB, the extent of product movement monitoring technically ends while the goods are on board the vessel at the port of loading. The extent of product movement monitoring technically ends while the goods are on board the vessel at the port of loading. While the goods are on board the vessel at the port of loading. The bank needs to monitor, but we cannot monitor forever. There must be a point at which the monitoring ends. We've discussed Incoterms in the last edition module of this program. So today we're not going to talk a lot about Incoterms. You can always get the previous version of the video to be able to learn about Incoterms. So as I summarize, monitoring, extremely important. Monitoring, extremely crucial. Monitoring, I am of the opinion, this is one of the most crucial challenge of export finance challenges in Nigeria. And it's the reason why banks lose money. And the reason is because we have challenge in understanding the process. We have challenge in understanding the process. So what then do we do? Let's learn the process, basically. That's what we should do. Learn the process. Learn the process. Let's learn the process. Let's learn the process. Let's learn the process. Let's learn the process.